Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the WeedHead. Happy New Year, y'all.
Happy New Year. And on today's episode of She Blaze, we're breaking Cannabis 2020 down from top to bottom. Congress kills crucial cannabis bills. And we dug up all the tea on Lowell's cannabis being sued by California State.
Ooh, it sounds like we have an excellent episode. I can't wait to get into it. But first, I have to kick things off with the high of the week. And my high of the week is that we are moving to an hour-long show.
Wow, an hour-long show. That is going to be amazing. We got so much things to chat about, so that's super exciting.
Yes. I'm sure there are other highs as well, but that's my high. We got an hour.
Because you get all the cannabis tea for the week, okay?
Yes.
And my high of the week is a little bit different. I'm still riding high from Christmas and New Year's because we got gifted some of the best hash in the world from Frenchy Cannoli and from the Dank Duchess. Oh my goodness. We was having a very hash Christmas, y'all.
Okay. I'm a little jelly because somehow that missed me, but I know it was good and I know it was delicious. I can't wait to get some more Dank Duchess hash.
Oh, it's amazing. But don't feel bad because you were in a much better market, trust. If you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. It is crazy out here. And I know that people are like, where are y'all? Well, I am actually on the road and I'm about to join ICE out in Georgia or Atlanta. So definitely a better market, of course, which brings me straight to our first hot topic. We are globalizing cannabis legalization. And so there are markets opening up all over the country. And to be truthful, there are a lot of firsts that are happening for Black and Hispanics that are part of the cannabis industry. And I am very excited because I was obviously we've been part of that for so long, but just before the new year, we released one of the first lists that have ever aggregated top Black and Hispanic men in the cannabis industry. It was an awesome response. We did it on the WeedHead.com and then it was picked up by Benzinga and then by Yahoo. So millions of people got to see 65 awesome Black and Hispanic men from all different walks of life and expertise that are leading in the cannabis industry. So that is a super hot topic because we got a lot of firsts happening in all of these markets.
Yes, we do have a lot of firsts. Well, congratulations on making a list like this. It's really important for our community to see that, there are some leaders in this cannabis space that look like you and me. And what was it like really creating this list?
Well, as we've always kind of talked about, people of color are often not included in the list that we see globally, right? Whether it's the High Times or the sort of the more mainstream list. You get the few consistent names, but for the most part, it's focused on celebrities. So we really created the list while we were doing the research for the new book. I got to do a quick plug because we got a new workbook, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. And during the time doing the research, I just didn't feel like we had enough media that showcased different types of Black and Hispanic men. So one of the things that I constantly am talking about is the media showcasing only athletes and rappers. And it's almost like telling the public that there are only certain types of Black and Hispanic men that could actually be in the legal industry. And I definitely know from our experience in the last 4 years and working with a lot of these men that is just not the case. We have so many executives, doctors, lawyers, people who are cultivators. Some folks are dispensary owners, but for the most part, it is across so many different areas. And it was just a pleasure to dig into their backgrounds and to highlight the leadership in the industry.
That's amazing. And, it's the first of many things. What do you think the feedback was like, after releasing a list like this?
Well, I don't, the feedback was mostly positive. I got to shout out everybody that shared the list. Like I said, it got picked up by Yahoo, so therefore it was able to be disseminated to millions. But at the same time, there was also some negative feedback as well. I mean, I think it's always interesting when you do something and it's really out of, it's out of the strength of love. Just, I love what these brothers are doing, and I'm a fan, and I think more people need to know about it, and I wanted to share that information. But a lot of people were, a little bit more aggressive than I would have expected, relating to, oh, they are not on the list, or that we missed someone, or we forgot someone. It was more concerning to me about forgetting people, because the truth of the matter is, been in the industry for a while. We ourselves as a team have accomplished a lot of firsts, and I don't take it lightly when it's time to do research on the first. And in fact, just to do a little bit of a sidebar, because we have so many firsts happening in the industry, it was, it was actually surprising to see how many people utilize that as a marketing tactic without having necessarily done the research first on who is actually in the space. And oftentimes we're the ones that are overlooked, right? And I didn't want any of these brothers to be overlooked. So it really did hurt my feelings just a little bit that some folks were like, oh, you forgot this person. No, we didn't forget them. The list could have been 200 Black and Hispanic men leading the industry. Unfortunately, that's a 40-minute read on a page. And, even though we did that research, everybody had a and links. Right. It just was too much, and we did have to edit, and we wanted to showcase a variety of things. A lot of times the lists are also, they're very homogenized. It's all cultivation, all dispensary. And that's the biggest mistake for our community specifically, because we are not seeing all the different ways that you can get into the industry. So that was purposeful. And I guess that's the one thing I would say was a little bit of, again, just slight, like, okay, I'm doing this for the better good, and it was a little bit of negative feedback related to that. We didn't forget anyone. We saw a lot of great men doing great things. We just had to do the hard thing, which is edit appropriately so that we can do a good variety.
Yes, well, that was definitely a mouthful, but I agree with what you're saying. And, people love to troll, but my thing is, you know what? If you thought you was left off the list, you see us, we in the trenches, we lobbying, we're educating our community. So, when you see us, say something, because I definitely got a lot to say. You heard?
You are hilarious. I mean, I agree with you there. I'm definitely one of those people where I would want to say something as well, which is, we're Real Talk on our podcast. So I got to at least address some of the things that have been coming in my DMs. I want to shout out Erica Pittman, who was just announced as the new CMO for Viola, which is Al Harrington's company. It's a multi-state cannabis company. We are very excited. I've been following Erica Pittman for years as a leader in marketing in my mainstream career. So I'm excited to have her in the industry. But, it was a little bit surprising to hear that it was announced that she was the first African-American woman to hold this position, because that's just unfortunately not true. And so it just brings me back to, I'm sensitive to the fact that we do need more media on the work that's being done on the ground. Right now, with hemp being legalized in all 50 states, and hemp is cannabis, and over 30 medical markets, there are actually a lot more multi-state cannabis companies than you know. And there have been a few of us already that have taken on that role of CMO, myself included.
Well, you gotta tell it like it is, but it's really hard, but we really talking about lobbying. It's very important educating your communities, because we got a lot of work to do as far as cannabis legalization, just overall, And so I would like to jump to our second hot topic, where we're really talking about how Congress played us just a little bit as they killed some cannabis bills during our holiday. So, they thought we forgot, but we didn't forget. We're bringing it up right now. You hear? And so I know you're wondering what some of the bills. The Secure And Fair Enforcement Banking Act, also known as the SAFE Act. We discussed it in season 2. They squashed it. Veterans Medical Marijuana Safe Harbor Act, squashed it. Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act 2019, which is also known as the MORE Act, and it's been through the ringer years and years at this point, it was squashed. So, a lot of this happened in the Senate, and I think that we have to know that this is a very important year. It's election year. If you do not support cannabis, in the words of my sister, Imani Dawson, we will vote you out. We will vote you out.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Actually, shout out to Imani, who was recently featured in a Forbes article, basically saying the same thing as it pertains to New York. On the eve of the governor giving his state of the state, where he is promising again that this is the year that New York will legalize. Well, my question is, how will New York legalize? And what you're pointing out is I guess a trend that's happening in the cannabis space, where we are bringing bills to the federal Congress and to the table, but we're not seeing any follow through. They are getting stopped in its track, and we celebrate every single time they move a little bit, almost a little bit too much, right? I mean, we talked about that last season, right?
It's kind of scary how hype we get. We're like, oh, things are changing. Things are changing.
It's clickbait. I mean, I'm a digital strategist, so I know that's part of it too. For example, when the MORE Act was introduced, basically all of the clickbait indicated that federally marijuana was going to be legalized everywhere. But it has so many steps to go through. Similarly with the Safe Banking Act. All of these bills not passing the Senate, though, show us what we need to be demanding from our 2020 presidential candidates, because whoever is in the White House is going to be very instrumental in influencing the Congress on what needs to happen next with cannabis legalization. A lot of people are not realizing that we have still a long way to go. So the SAFE Act was really meant for banking and finance protection. Right now, as we all know from our own experience, our client experience, there are a lot of challenges around merchant processing and banking for all of cannabis, both marijuana and hemp, which is now legal. And the SAFE Act was to help provide a little bit of cover for that until legalization happens, and that's gone away. The Veterans Medical Marijuana Safe Harbor Act was really about protecting veterans, which they really need to be protected as patients. But because of the federal legalization, there are problems from healthcare access to loans. And so this was to protect the VA loans on mortgage. And then the MORE Act, which, by the way, we actually featured Senator Cory Booker in our list of 65. He introduced the Marijuana Justice Act in 2017. I wrote about it for Entrepreneur. And that didn't even make it to the House to get voted on. We've gotten a little bit more progress, right? So now we have the MORE Act. It is a super bill, essentially, that is going to legalize federally cannabis and expunge records, as well as provide reinvestment. It is essentially like the MRTA in New York, but on a federal level. And that didn't get past Senate. And I imagine that's going to be the hardest bill to get passed, because we have a lot of private prisons that have essentially made money on Black and Hispanic, mostly men, in prison, primarily for marijuana prohibition. And so there's a lot of big businesses that don't want to see these acts come through, which is why, what your point is earlier, we need to lobby. It is not a joke. If you didn't make my list and you think you should be, then probably it means that you need to step up from an advocacy perspective. And I'm encouraging people to step up from an advocacy perspective. You can't be a business owner in this industry without being an advocate first, point blank, period.
Seriously. And you always tell us, like, I know when we're having our private discussion, like, we need to go back to government class. You need to understand how the American government works, because I think a little of, like, some of these memes got us confused, and, it's been a minute since we've been in government, and the media, they're not actually the government.
They're not. And you can't believe everything the media is saying either. So do your own research. You're right. The impeachment memes had me cracking up, because it was clear that people really do not know how or understand how government works. We have checks and balances, but it does start with having the right person in the White House. So definitely for 2020, look at the candidates and what are they talking about in relation to cannabis.
True. Well, we're going to go into deeper discussion about what people should do for Cannabis 2020 so they could really see legalization step up in their area. But I definitely want to get on to our next topic, which is about Illinois actually selling adult use cannabis on January 1st. And so how did that happen? They allowed medical marijuana cultivators and dispensaries to be ushered in their legalization. So they're now, opening up the process to add licenses, but you're not going to be able to see that for a while,
Yeah, congratulations to Illinois. Shout out to Chicago Normal and Edie Moore, who's the executive director over there. Kiana Hughes with Elevated Education, one of the only minority-owned, state-approved education company for vendors in the cannabis space. I am excited about what is on the horizon, but there's also a lot of we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, right? So just before legalization happened in the last 3 months of 2019, we had a lot of Johnny come lately, mostly from the Black leadership in Illinois that wanted to stop legalization from happening because they knew, like you said, the medical marijuana cultivators and dispensaries were going to be grandfathered in, and all of them are, for the most part, white ownership. There's no people of color right now in the legal adult use market for cannabis in Illinois. And that has to do with the fact that, guess what? For the last 3-4 years that it's been medically legal, there hasn't been Black leadership supporting it. And so we are late to the game as per usual. And this is not just, Illinois. We see this in every market. And so it's important for us to not try to block the process because we're coming in late. We have to figure out how we impact the process from the door. And so based on the law, the state's going to start receiving and processing new licenses on March 15th. They opened up the application and over 700 applications were received. More than 400 were equity applicants, people of color. We saw the lines around the corner. It was great to see that many people lined up, as well as that many people lined up to get actual cannabis. So we're starting off seeing a good amount of people intentionally trying to get into the market, but I do wish we would try to do this more at the medical marijuana state of the market before it gets to adult use. For various reasons. For one, we would have more operators to begin with, and perhaps the states that finally legalize won't run out of cannabis so soon.
Right. So like you're saying, basically their first couple days, their first week of legalization is bananas. They are literally sold out of products in a lot of area. I mean, the wait lines are extremely long. If you're a medical marijuana patient and been one, could you imagine going into your, favorite store, because there's only a few of them too. It's only a handful of stores and cultivators. So it's not kind of like a big market like Arizona. It's still pretty small. Could you imagine just going in and having to wait in line versus, in December before Christmas, you were kind of in and out the door. It is like crazy to me. So I just really feel like, where do you see the Illinois market going? Do you think that it will be able to uphold the amount of people that will come through the door before they start allowing other licenses to grow and dispense?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I just don't foresee that happening. Like you said, there are already shortages, and a lot of people are reaching out to government officials, the governor in particular, to say, hey, I can't get cannabis. And to your point, there's a good contingent of folks who were already medical marijuana patients, and now that's at risk. They were already struggling. And because of the federal legalization, or the fact that it is illegal, there's no interstate, meaning cross-state distribution. So it's not like Illinois can borrow cannabis from Oregon, which has a plethora, right? It's not like they can borrow from Michigan, which unfortunately Michigan don't have enough either.
Okay.
So
that state is empty too.
Yes, that state is empty too. So there's definitely this challenge of, basically, I feel like regulators not understanding how much is actually needed to run a market. The first day, there were over $3 million in sales for legal cannabis, which is amazing. But by day 5, to your point, it was already sold out. And this feels like deja vu. It happened in Nevada for distribution and access. We are seeing a shortage in Michigan. There's just a real issue with trying to assume that your medical market operators will be able to fulfill the need of a legal market. Another thing that I would say is perhaps, and this is something we can learn from Illinois, perhaps instead of trying to quickly fill the adult use market, I think we need to do more energy and more education in the medical market. We need to tell more people to actually go get their medical card and explain to them how and why that's important. And I think in Illinois, it's even more so the case, because what we're finding is, despite adult use legalization and a governor that has pardoned over 11,000 individuals for low-level possession charges, we're still seeing biases that are against Black and Hispanic communities, such as the Chicago Public Housing Authority essentially saying, hey, great that your cannabis is legalizing, but you can't smoke it here because you're going to lose your house if you do. There's a little bit more protection when you're a medical patient and you have a card. There's a protection from job due to HIPAA. We did that last episode or last season. So I just think that we do need to fortify the medical market, even though the adult use market is open.
You definitely do. And Illinois did a pretty cool thing. They do allow medical marijuana patients to have no taxes or limited taxes, I believe, versus 25% and up taxes on their actual cannabis. And it's crazy because, people want to always compare cannabis to alcohol, but the taxes on alcohol versus the taxes on cannabis is something completely different. And so it is, people could work on some things, but they did look out for their medical marijuana patients there. So if you are a native to Illinois, your best bet is to get a medical marijuana card, just so you could be able to afford cannabis more.
That's so true. I mean, you bring up a great point about the taxes. Another common mistake we're seeing is markets opening with enormous taxes. We saw the receipts that were being posted. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not buying cannabis in Illinois no time soon. Surely, if I did buy it in Illinois, they've implemented amnesty boxes at the airport. No, I'm smoking and eating all my stuff because it's expensive. I'm not leaving the market, or leaving it in a box before I leave that market. Yes, Illinois is known for high taxes already, but the way that this is currently set up, it is essentially set up for the legacy market, or what folks call the Black market, to continue to persist, because it's still going to be a much cheaper deal to get it from your plug than it is to go to the dispensary. Unless, like you said, you're a medical marijuana patient. It's worth it just for the taxes alone.
Absolutely. But, they are making a lot of money with this taxes in the state. So I'm curious on how they're going to spend their tax money. And this just lets you know, cannabis is big business. But with big business comes big problems.
Yes.
So we move on to our fourth topic, because we have to talk about a major cannabis brand. It's one of the biggest out of California. Lowell Herb Company is being sued by California State, y'all.
I was like, when I read this in our prep notes, I was like, wait, not Lowell. Y'all know that's my favorite flower. While we were living in California, I was literally sniffing it out. I love Lowell flower. And I think that I've always shouted them out for doing a great job in marketing and really understanding their target consumer. But Woo. You are definitely gonna have to break this down for us because I'm confused. Didn't they just open the first cannabis what is it, cafe or
restaurant? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so it is messy and it is definitely confusing. And you are correct. We talked about it in season 2. Lowell Cannabis Restaurant premiered in LA on October 1st. But they had a lot of problems starting earlier in the year that we didn't know about. So the government made a quiet raid in March of 2019 with one of their warehouses in California. Well, we fast forward to December 1st or 2nd, depending on which articles you're reading. Lowell Cannabis Restaurant changed their name to the original Cannabis Cafe. And it threw out a press release hurrying up saying, you know what, the partnership with Lowell has ended. Well, do you want to know why? Because December 13th, California State then filed suit against Lowell Herb Company and all of its entities and naming their CEO and co-owner for allegedly engaging in commercial cannabis activity without a license. I believe they confiscated over thousands of cannabis flower, pre-rolls, and extract, and it's stemming from the dates of December 2018 to March of 2019. So, this name change comes, really quickly before they get sued. So I wonder how they know that, who they got at the office to let them know, you might want to stop associating it's crazy. This is cannabis. This is big cannabis 2020, y'all.
It is. I mean, you hit, first of all, so many things that I'm like, what do I respond to first? This is what we're learning about big cannabis, is that there are a lot of cover-ups. And of course, we're going to talk about some of that in our Cannabis 2020 Outlook, but I don't know whether this is a cover-up or not. All of this is alleged, right? But what I will say is, on the eve of Cushy Punch getting over $20 million of illegal merchandise confiscated in a raid, I don't know how much merchandise was confiscated here. There is a problem, in my opinion, with these big cannabis companies or corporations doing business in a way that is not up to the highest standard of integrity, but still getting slaps on the wrist, mostly just getting fined. I mean, this suit doesn't seem like it's a criminal suit. It feels very civil, and therefore it's going to be a financial suit. Basically, California wants their money. They want
money check.
Yes, they better have our money. Yes, they want their money. But, I'm a girl from Brooklyn, and we just talked about what's happening in states like Illinois, New York, New Jersey. People of color are still getting locked up for smells, not able to smoke in their own homes. But then we have these big companies that obviously have a lot fatter pockets, and they're getting slaps on the wrist. I personally do not believe that there should be any criminalization of cannabis as it pertains to individual or consumer, which, by the way, is the majority of arrests. But on the business side, there absolutely needs to be some criminalization. When you have companies this large, they're being run by supposed seasoned business executives and still making these mistakes. At the same time, having enough experience with big cannabis companies in our time, I also know that most vertically integrated companies, they don't just have one license. That is for much smaller markets like Minnesota. In California, to be vertically integrated, odds are you have anywhere from 5 to 15 licenses that you had to acquire in order for you to run your operation. And it only takes one of them to be out of order or to lapse in order for you to be now operating without a license. So I love Lowell Flower, want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I also want to say this is a consistent trend we're seeing among big cannabis companies, not necessarily doing the most, doing the best business and showing integrity in their decision making.
They really aren't, because there's not much conversation from Lowell's end as far as, the articles that I read and the different information. I actually have a link to the lawsuit. So, I've kind of read those
Good.
prints.
Drop those in the comments for everybody, please.
Okay, I will try.
um,
But it's juicy, but not that juicy because, like you said, it is actually a civil suit. And California does want their money. But ultimately, this is still a lot like, when big Wall Street guys are doing the, what's the thing where, they do the stocks and they tell information. What's it called? Inside Trader.
trading.
Yes, insider trading. And so, so this feels a lot like insider trading to a certain degree of how they kind of get a slap on the wrist and pay a fine and keep it walking, but they don't do it to the same as for people of color. And so it's kind of really offensive. And at the end of the day, I believe it is a compliance issue because of the short period of time that lapsed in between. If you're a big company and you got all these millions of dollars spending on even marketing, you need to make sure that you could afford to make sure your license doesn't lapse. And if it's going to lapse, you have your cannabis out of there. Stop selling it out under that license then. You know what I'm saying? So I'm actually really offended because to think somebody could spend $50 million on, marketing, but don't have enough money to know that their license is about to be expired is like, what?
It's prioritization. I think you call out a great point. One of the first times I heard Wanda James speak, I laughed so hard when she told the audience that more than half of her budget is spent on compliance officers. She got about 4 or 5 of them because she can't pay anybody else if she's not in compliance. And the thing about California licenses is that the license is tied to a location. And so it's very possible that this could be an administrative oversight. But I would encourage any big cannabis companies to stop spending so much on your executive salaries and maybe do a much better job at really fortifying your compliance department. This is one of those areas where crossing over into the industry is just plethora of opportunities. If you're a lawyer or if you worked in compliance in any way, shape, or form in a regulated industry like alcohol, tobacco, or even pharmaceuticals, you can actually apply your skills here quite intensely because there are so many changes to the cannabis laws that happen. And honestly, this could have easily been an oversight simply by the transition once California became adult use legal. In 2018, they implemented a lot of changes to the law, and a lot of people had to drop off of the grid that we all know for the most part, if you're a consumer, they're still in the gray market at this point. But yeah, they're not in the legal market because they can't afford the changes required to be compliant. I don't believe that was Lowell's situation as one of the top 3 flower brands in the state, but I do think that they did make a mistake by not paying close attention to this.
You are right. And the government is not playing nice with us. They're not playing nice with the legal cannabis industry. And so I think this is a great way to lead into our main topic about preparing people for Cannabis 2020. So it would be great if we could give them just a current description of the cannabis industry right now.
Well, okay, so this is very juicy. We are in Cannabis 2020, and so there are different areas that I feel like are part of the industry that folks really need to watch out for, especially if you're new to the industry. Now, the very first thing, of course, I have to constantly plug is my book because it does outline from the rooter to the tutor every part or every sector of the industry. It's more than just growing and selling. And in fact, it's so much more that we have kind of had what we call a settlers coming in as big cannabis corporations. So there's big cannabis corporations like Canopy Grow and Acreage and the MedMens of the world, Lowell, where they have multi-state operations, maybe even multi-country operations, and they're throwing a lot of money into the space. But at the same time, not necessarily seeing always the best product output or compliance output to our earlier point. But yeah, that is a big trend right now. More and more big cannabis corporations, and they're coming in full steam, which also means that they're hiring as well. And they're looking less from the actual cannabis community that exists right now and more from people like myself who have a more traditional corporate background that are looking to transition in. So if you're new to the industry, there is opportunity in various states to actually get legitimate corporate positions. But do so at your own risk, because the next thing that I want to talk about in the industry that people need to be concerned about are the illegal cover-ups. We're here to dish the dirt. ICE is always going to find the tea, of course. And so we tell you as soon as we know about it, but sometimes, you know, it's still after the fact. In the last 6 months of 2019, we've seen a sort of the bubble that has been created around cannabis start to burst a bit. People are liking it to .com, but I don't feel like .com has as many cover-ups. I think that definitely you're seeing way too many inflated valuations of companies, especially CBD companies that are in US but have put themselves on the Canadian Stock Exchange, and they basically have no sales or even some negative profitability, but they're still valuating themselves so highly, primarily based on their C-suite, which typically tends to be white male corporate executives that don't know anything about cannabis, to be honest. So you want to look out for whatever company you're joining or investing in, making sure that their P&L and their structure actually looks solid, and that they're talking about the right things, compliance, as well as legislative lobbying around the right topics that you believe in. Next, there are some markets that have opened up officially by law, but have not done so by regulation. We're seeing these stall over some time. We talked about it last season, where you have states like Georgia and Michigan. They haven't been able to really get things started. They open up the market and then they quickly close it down or not allow more applications to come through the site. It seems a little shady. I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but while that's happening, that means that there is opportunity still for folks to come in as an advocate to say what's going on, and if it's not the way you want it to see it or you want it to be, make some changes or advocate for those changes. The last and certainly not least, we continue to talk about this, but really important trend in the cannabis industry is around social justice and health justice, particularly a priority around Black and brown people who are still getting arrested at the highest rates, even in legalized states, whether it's a medical state or adult use state. They're still being discriminated against. There are still policies like the one we talked about with Chicago Public Housing that are preventing people of color, who have largely been mostly the people who've gotten the bad end of the stick as far as prohibition. They're preventing them from getting into the industry or benefiting from the industry. We have a lot of work to do as far as reinvestment into those communities. And I say, put your money where your mouth is. Do not spend your dollar with any big cannabis corporations that are more known for their illegal cover-ups than they are for supporting the community that you belong in. I am not taking any prisoners, really, when it comes to calling people out in 2020. Everybody's talking about 2020 vision. That means it's perfect vision and you can see everything. Well, I want our community to see what's happening. You do have a lot of big cannabis corporations. They're giving a good talk about social equity, but they're not supporting the organizations doing the work on the ground. And we need to see that change.
I definitely agree with you just about legal cover-ups and stuff and looking at different corporations. Well, a lot of these companies, the jewel I'm about to drop, a lot of these companies, they have their investment portfolio accessible online. If you dig further enough through their site map, and you're able to look at their P&L and budget, and really that's how you'll find it. You know, a lot of these companies are still asking for investment money, even though they've had 50 million invested in them for whatever reason, which isn't a high number on a scale of things in real life, you know, obviously, but you are able to kind of just get an eye and just look through and see where they're starting at, who they're spending their money on, how much does that CEO make? You know, those are the things that you learn. Is a very long document. Child, that document is long, but it's definitely worth your time if you're serious about the cannabis industry and if you're serious about, you know, making them put their money where their mouth is with this social justice.
That's so true.
Right. So really, what do you think, Dasheeda, the people could do in 2020 to move legalization forward in their community?
That's a loaded question, as you know, and I'm gonna try
Well, it's
not
the
to.
main topic.
It is the main topic.
Yes, yes. You
I'm
might
gonna clear my throat and
sip your
sip a
tea
little
for a
bit of my
second.
little coffee before I start.
Right. Sip the coffee, not the tea. I
Yeah.
do drink I do drink hot tea with honey. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a loaded question and one that I've thought about quite a bit and I'm continuing to write about. The very first step for everybody is to educate yourself. So as always, got to give another quick plug for my book, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. It is a workbook with 100 self-assessment questions. It teaches you about the cannabis industry, but we also launched our introductory course bundle, which is a 3-week course online. We have new cohorts starting every month. The book is only $20. The course is only $100 and comes with a book. But basically, we're trying to teach people how to succeed in the cannabis industry by showing them what the cannabis industry actually looks like from a business strategist perspective. I talk about real science because I am a molecular biologist. I utilize real business strategy because I am a proven and award-winning business executive. And I give real talk because I'm a girl from Brooklyn and that's all I know how to do. So it is one of those things where I really want to encourage everyone to educate yourself and make that investment in yourself. And no, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars. And there's a lot of people out there with those type of scams. And I'm not a proponent of it. No, you don't have to join an MLM. No, you don't have to start selling the MLM CBD. I'm not necessarily a fan of those. We don't know if they work. You need to educate yourself on the real science behind cannabis and then create a real strategic plan on how you will use your current skills and your current passions to get in. It doesn't make sense to reinvent yourself in this industry. It takes a lot longer. It also doesn't make sense to only go through the door that has the long line. I'm a person that's always looking for the cheat codes. I played a lot of Super Mario Brothers. So, you know, instead of going through every single level, you can get the cheat codes and advance from level 1 to level 13. And I kind of feel like that's what this book is really intended to do. A lot of people reach out to me asking, can I be their mentor? And I would love to, but I wrote the book so I could be a mentor to the masses. You don't have to make the same mistakes that everybody is making. And I've seen so much success in our first 2 editions with people taking the book and in a matter of months, basically being able to create a plan for themselves, whether they're doing a side hustle or they want to be in the C-suite. So first, educate yourself. The second step, please, we talked about it. You need to lobby, get out, advocate. It's so important to be an advocate. You can do it on your own. I don't. I advocate with my sisters, and I'm also part of a number of organizations. So I'm a big proponent of joining the right organization, whether it's NORML. We're part of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. There's Minority Cannabis Business Association. The list goes on. But there are local and national and international organizations that are all actively working towards social equity, social justice, and making cannabis changes in existing markets and in new markets. Really, the government only listens when people have a problem and when they show up. So you need bodies in the seats and you need to participate in those lobby days. New York, for example, we have a governor who is saying, hey, this is going to happen in 2020. As far as I'm concerned as an advocate, no, it's not going to happen unless it looks like how we need it to look. And I think that that's where we have to be right now with every single state. We want legalization, but we do want day one equity, and we want to make sure that we're fighting for the right things, including the right taxes and the right framework that will make the market successful. It's not also just about Black and brown folks. It's a very important point, but it's about small businesses in general, which will benefit Black and brown folks. And it's about understanding that cannabis is actually medicine first and foremost. So when we are taxing it like it's alcohol, we're basically giving a sin tax to something that actually is good for people if we're taught or retaught the right way. And so it's important for us not to keep perpetuating those same stereotypes. But again, if you educate yourself first and then go to lobbyists, then go to lobby, then you will come with the right information. The last step, which is the most important step, is when you get in front of your local government, educate them. They don't know what's going on. That's real. I'm going to be 100%. 99.9% of the state and local officials that I have worked with start off with a very misconstrued perspective around cannabis. It's not their fault. It's what we all were subjected to during the time that marijuana was prohibited, but even teaching them that hemp and marijuana are both cannabis can change the game. For example, in New York, and I keep referencing it because the state of the state just happened and everybody's watching New York, because a lot of people don't realize it is the largest underground market in the world. So everybody's watching New York. But in New York, the governor has proposed a total cannabis regulatory structure that regulates both hemp and marijuana under the same bill. Versus, say, Oregon, they separate them very completely. And in fact, in some states like Oregon and California, you can't do both, which is, I think, a little bit of an erroneous mistake, but you got to fight for the right information so that you can teach them the right things that need to be in the law. I want to give a quick shout out to the majority leader, Crystal People-Stokes in New York. She's like the mother of the marijuana movement in New York. She's a great example of a lawmaker that is constantly seeking education around cannabis. She travels to other markets, including just over the bridge into Canada. And then she brings back that education in the form of forums and events for her community. We need more legislative leaders to be like this. They don't need to be in a room by themselves talking about this, because like I said, 99% of them don't know what's going on. So it's important, go out and educate your local and state officials.
Well, 99.9% of them don't even know how to get on Facebook, as they was asking questions to people about things. So let's just start there, you guys. So that is definitely a problem. And, there are a lot of very slow medical marijuana markets. How do you evolve a medical marijuana market to look similarly to, Arizona is not the best market, but I do think they have a better medical marijuana market than a lot of other states, just from the simple fact of access. You get to have flower, extracts, edible RSO oil, those different things that are, really important because people consume and need it in so many different ways.
Yes.
How do those medical marijuana markets move forward with their already slow market, already very strict, regulated, licensed, heavy, not many licensed, but heavy regulation market?
That's a great question. That's a big mistake that is common. And I was just at NECAN in Atlantic City talking about how New Jersey should not be crying over spilled milk in terms of not legalizing right away adult use, because New Jersey has 14 of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies have headquarters in New Jersey. It graduates over 20,000 science majors per year. That's a state that could be leading in medical marijuana, but is not. To your point, because it started off so heavily regulated, a lot of misinformation. The ailments that were qualifying ailments were limited, and they've since expanded. The governor, Governor Murphy in New Jersey, has a goal of getting to 250,000 patients by November. This is where it started.
Maybe
last year.
Have mode on the weed, y'all.
Yes, listen, he is definitely focused on expanding medical marijuana, but at the same time, the state public will be voting on adult use legalization in November. So you can do both, but I do recommend that more states start to really look at their medical program and stop trying to assume that all of the money is going to be made in adult use. I gave a lecture at NECAN, and the ailments that cannabis deals with is nearly $500 billion in potential. That's $500 billion of potential sales that it could take from the pharmaceutical industry simply because it's a better product for those ailments. The list of those things, mostly inflammation-based diseases, is just really high. You guys already know my story with my autoimmune issues and early signs of MS. Cannabis is the best medicine. It's certainly better than steroids or the other things that doctors have suggested. We work with organizations like Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, which is actually based out of New Jersey, to help move along health professionals. Every health professional should know about the endocannabinoid system. And that's how the markets in the medical states are going to move faster. You can't circumvent the health professionals. People still go to doctors and nurses to get their recommendations. And therefore, those people need to be educated. So we have an opportunity to do more continuing medical education and continuing education in the health professions in order for that to be disseminated to their patients. We have an opportunity to expand the ailments that people can qualify for. For example, while the governor's talking about this, I want to ask him what we doing about the medical program in New York. You can't get flower in New York. The oil super expensive and not that great. If you are looking to legalize adult use in New York, I got questions for the governor on how he expects the current 10 operators to actually fulfill New York's demand. Right now, they don't.
Are they going to get licenses?
What'd you say?
I said, are they going to give licenses?
Well, apparently, you know, in the bill as it was written, I hope it gets changed, but in his bill, they get grandfathered in the same way that Illinois just did. And the assumption is based on the fact that they believe, since they're already in the market, they're going to be more prepared to actually serve an adult use market. And I'm saying, that's just not accurate. We're seeing that. We're seeing Illinois run out in 5 days. And they already had flower. So it's a challenge.
Them 10 licenses ain't finna do nothing. Okay. That is like
a little something. They have Alliance. They have their own lobbying group. That is the New York Cannabis Industry Association. And they basically have done a few things that we need to keep an eye on as consumers and as entrepreneurs. They have lobbied to the governor's office to try to prevent any new people from joining the adult use market initially for a certain period of time. That is essentially them wanting to corner a market. That also shows they're not paying attention to what's happening in other markets. That shows that they don't care necessarily that they're not going to be able to fulfill all of the need in New York. New York, as I said, right now is the largest legacy market in the world, not the country, the world. People come there to get their cannabis underground. You can order on an app right now in New York, even though it is illegal. And these MSOs right now in New York believe that without cultivating flower, which they're not allowed to, that they're going to be able to service this market right away. That is just not true. In order for that to happen, the governor needs to make flower available like now in the medical market. Let's get cultivation started now. He also should probably be looking at hemp licenses and seeing those transition more into the market, because at least they're cultivating, because hemp flower is legal in New York. So the list goes on. I could probably write a book. I mean, I already wrote a book, but I could probably write another book on just I'm a mess. I know. But I guess I get real hype on it because I really get frustrated as an analyst and as a strategist. Like, this isn't rocket science, some of it. We just are too greedy, some folks, too capitalistic to see that if we open it up to a diverse market with multiple levels, we'll have the best ecosystem to drive a market that is worthy of moving people from the legacy market to the legal one. Right now, I haven't been to not one market that makes me feel like I still shouldn't call my guy.
Definitely not on the East Coast, okay? And the West, they got a couple issues, but
the price point.
What'd you say?
Price point, taxes.
Oh, true. It's definitely kind of harder being like.
Yes, I definitely think I'm challenging everybody to do better.
prepare for 2020. Do you have any last thoughts as we, usher ourselves out of here after being here for almost an hour? We made it. We made it.
So, as always, I like to drop jewels. I can get real excited. I'm probably going to write a few articles about this. So I definitely want everyone to continue to follow the weedhead.com because, this is just the start of a great year already with our 65 Black and Hispanic men leading in cannabis. The biggest thing that I would say to remember is that every market is different, but you can learn from every market. There are what we call in the business world key insights. I never ever was able to get anything moved at Target and Victoria's Secret in the way of big investments without proving the case for it. And I encourage everyone, whether you're a business person or an advocate or just a consumer, to branch out beyond your market. Don't just assume whatever's happening in your market is what's happening all over. And don't assume that Colorado and California are really setting the standard, because what we're finding is that they've made a lot of mistakes. They've had to go back and change some of those things with new bills, and I'm happy to see that. But we can prevent some of those mistakes by just not doing that. Don't start from the place of 20 years ago, right? Start from today and future thinking, and I think we'll be in much better shape.
I think we got to do a main topic about really discussing all the bills that have literally been either added or changed or had another dash on a really long thing to, understand what's happened in their market after they legalize, you know what I mean? Yep. And so I think that's really important. Thanks for that. I got something for y'all soon.
I can't wait. We're so excited for season 3. We got mad hot topics. And of course, we're going to have a lot more guests this season too. So we got a lot for people to look out for.
Yes, we do. And it's really exciting because we are definitely stepping it up for season 3. And the information is just going to get better and better because people are really hype on cannabis. Like, I do have a little deja vu from New York. I'm like, did this happen last year? Like, did you say that in his last one?
Yes, he did. Except now he's adding things that came into play. Like, for example, and I just gotta, because we got a little bit of tea and I haven't been able to say anything to y'all about it because we're in different places. But he also included some sort of never been seen before initiative that's going to be a research institute with SUNY. That sounds so familiar. No shade, but it does sound
all the shade, child.
It sounds like a project I was just working on. No, I really do hope these things come through. I love being a pioneer in the industry because our ideas are eventually implemented. And it feels so good sometimes to go back to 2016 and 2017 and say, hey, remember when I posted this? Yeah, that still applies.
Well, true. You ain't got to be shady. It's okay. I'm going to throw all the shade. I'm still from Atlanta, baby. We throw shade. So, yeah. Okay, well, you're welcome. Anyway, I'm a nut, but that's so funny. We haven't really talked, but all the Dawsons will be together soon. Oh, man, that's going to be really exciting.
But we got to give a plug. We're going to be all together for what? We're bringing our book signing, sharing success in cannabis to Atlanta, baby. And so on January 18th, we will be in Atlanta on Saturday doing a book signing, and it's going to be all the Dawson sisters. So yes, fun, and more fun. I don't know if we're going to have enough cannabis though.
Well, we're in Georgia.
Exactly.
We ain't got the hash.
Okay. So yeah, that's CBD is gonna be really
kind of. And thank you for the plug. That's why I need you. That's why you my ace boom coon. Anyway, let's go on and get out of here because we got a whole day of work. You already know how this entrepreneur life is. So catch She Blaze every Saturday morning on Facebook Live, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're also live on SoundCloud at 11 a.m. too. Yes, you can hear us by audio with SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts,
Well, we just kind of cut out a little bit on the audio, so I apologize, but you can always follow me at the Cannabis CEO on Instagram and Twitter. You also can find all of us, the WeedHead and Company, at theweedhead.com.
Yes, have an amazing week, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.